today, a painted dog Pimp My Habitat, with not one, but 2 trees. An alfresco sheltered area, its own kennel, and the whole thing looks like a dog as well. Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to another Pimp My Habitat, where we take a community submitted habitat from one of the Geekism community and fancy it up a little bit, turn it from a Crapitat into a FABitat. And today we have a African painted dog or African wild dog habitat sent in by Kazi Charb. They say, "This is my African wild dog habitat. It feels large and boring. I tried to make a sort of walkway, but the whole thing feels empty and lackluster. The place needs a serious facelift." So there's loads to talk about here. First of all, it's a really interesting shape, but as we've always said with these things, we're not going to be choosing the shape of the habitat because this most likely fits into a zoo. There is probably a path here, there is probably a path down here, so yeah, we can understand why it looks like a funky sort of shape, so we're going to leave that pretty much as is, but there's definitely things we can do to kind of make this a little bit more interesting. One thing I've noticed, the wild dogs have very low requirements for foliage. So using a big old tree like this umbrella tree here is using up such a large percentage of that foliage number. You know, you can get so much more out of it by using smaller trees like we've got over here. The other thing I don't really get is why we've got this really nice like area here, rockwork, plants, building, and then just nothing else all the way down. It's really open and empty, and I think we're going to have to spread around all this stuff. There's no back wall on this. I assume that's a blueprint saving thing. I know we had a little joke about it, but yeah, we'll put a back wall on that. The building itself is fine, I suppose. The roof's a little funky. I think we could probably do something there. One thing I really like, okay, I was trying to find some good points about the build that we can work off of, is I really love this. Like a little walkway into a little hut down here. And over the water, I think we totally run with this theme. I think we totally run with this design. I love this little I think it just looks great. I think it looks cute. It looks interesting. I say that we build this whole area here into like almost like an abandoned fishing village or something. Now, there are definitely issues with having sort of man-made structures in animal habitats, and they can sometimes be considered a little bit too sort of anthropomorphizing. But I think here, I just think that's a really nice little looking thing that we can totally work off of and build and fill out a little bit with the water down there. Here, I think we keep this as a run, maybe even try and form it into a run with some foliage down the middle of it, so we've got opposite areas either side, because the dogs do like to run around a little bit. And then here with this, what I assume is a viewing area. Like I say, unfortunately the building, the habitat blueprint thing cuts off a lot here, so I'm assuming this is a way to view them while they're having a sleep. How the hell did you just get in there? Get back inside, which is why they're all running amok out here. We're going to have to try and fix that, obviously, as well. But I really like this, but I think this needs to be sort of Africaned up a little bit to make it a little bit more interesting. So yeah, loads to do. Let's dive in. So we're starting up at this end, mostly because I was that excited to get into it. I thought that little fence, the floor bit going up to the hut, I think it just looked really, really good. So we put it out of the way and basically just kind of sort of rip it apart and carry bits over and do stuff with it. So I wanted to change the water a little bit so that the floor here really does look like a sort of floating dock space. This isn't based on anything specific. The one thing I really want to kind of get across with these Pimp My Habitat videos is that I'm always going to take what's there and develop it, okay? Because I think if I start completely ripping everything out and just, you know, Googling something online, you know, and finding something online and copying it, or you know, that kind of takes away from the idea of the series. The idea here is to take these little sparks of good design that's hiding sometimes a little bit, and just sort of bringing them out and sort of showing that, a little bit more, not necessarily effort, I don't think that's a fair term, but, a little bit more sort of thought, maybe a little bit of time, sometimes a little bit of skill. And I'm not saying that some people are more skilled than others. Skill comes with time. Just keep playing the game. People always say to me, I can't believe how creative it is. I play the game. Like, I've had about 250 hours in the game since it came out. Now, granted, it's my job to play this game basically at the minute, so I'm able to give that much time to it. But if you're not, don't worry. Like, keep playing. You will get there, and you will start to see pieces, and you'll start to see how they work and how you can put them together to create others. And one thing I always say, and this is something that Paulsley mentioned on the first episode of him and Beyond Drew's collaboration project, which is called something like Drewsley, I think, which is an amazing name. He mentioned on there is one of the best things you can do. I think it might have been Drew who mentioned it, but they both kind of talked about it, is that don't look at the piece for what the game tells you it is. So if a piece says, African shelf, that doesn't mean you can only use it as a shelf in the African builds. Turn it upside down, you'll probably find that it works quite well as a floorboard in an Asian building or something like that. That's just a random example. But, often just having a look at pieces, fiddling them around, changing what they do, that can really be a great source of inspiration. I say that, I pretty much use the African pieces as African pieces here, to be honest with you, because I'm having a little bit of withdrawal symptoms from the African theme, which in the game is easily the most filled out theme. It's the most animals we have are from Africa, the most themed pieces we have are from Africa. And I'm building a North American zoo that has a total of like 4 animals, I think. So these are another reason why I really enjoy doing these as well, because it means I can take whatever's already there, different theme or whatever, and really play around with it. So I mentioned in the first bit of the video that I like the idea of making this into a bit more of a sort of proper run, by giving it a bit of a barrier in the middle there, and it also is a good way of getting some foliage in the place without it being low down for the animals to really rip up. Although the dogs can get up to that area, and they sometimes do. They jump up and have a little hangout and see what's going on. But just that slight height variation there, and sort of creating this retaining wall using the rocks there. Just a little thing like that, and a few bits of this grass and this bit of rock work at the one end just immediately turns it in from a flat space into something that's interesting to look at and interesting for the animals to move around as well. And by getting rid of that, I think it was a umbrella tree or whatever it was, that huge tree in the middle that was taking up like 10% of the foliage budget in this game. Look at all the foliage I'm able to get down here and not go over it. I mean, I'm pushing it towards the end there. You'll see the number just start to drop, but I really wanted this to show you that it's probably a little bit too lush, really, but I really wanted to show you just how lush you can make the spaces if you're intelligent about the pieces that you select. And that's the big key thing here, really, with the foliage, is if you've got a habitat that can only have 8% foliage, you stick a big tree in there, that's your 8%, So what you're going to have to do is try to tone that down a little bit, use smaller trees, use bushes, use grasses. They class a lot lower as far as the percentage is concerned, and it means you're going to be able to get a much richer foliage from a much lower percentage. The building here, this is actually the one I'm doing here, is the second time I did it, because the first time I completely ripped it all out, and I thought, and did an African build with the thatch roof. I thought, no, do you know what? That's not really what Pimp My Habitat's all about. There's some really nice woodwork here that they've taken the time to do, so I thought, let's try again, and we'll incorporate that woodwork a little bit. So really, all I've done here is replace the walls and the roof to kind of give it more of a sort of traditional African feel, to tie it in with the other end of the habitat, and really the rest of it is just kind of moving stuff around. There's some interesting placements of toys in this one, so I'm basically moving them around and obviously putting that back wall on there, but I'm pretty sure we just lost that because how the barrier works with habitats. It's a bit of a weird one, really. It should, I think personally, as long as the barrier is touching part of a building, the whole building should come along with the habitat. Fortunately, it doesn't work like that. It actually sort of looks at it piece by piece, which means you have to do these like fake barriers all the way around the place, and it does get a little bit funky, unfortunately. But yeah, so we filled that in, and then really it's just a case of giving some slight higher variations. I forgot to take proper photos at the beginning, unfortunately, so I've had to take that as a still, but you can see there the difference with that building. The building, I would say, is actually plainer than the one it started off with, but I think sometimes it's important to remember that it doesn't have to be that detailed. Sometimes a little bit less detail can work there. But really here, the key thing I want you to take away from this is how you can use different kinds of foliage to get a much better coverage on these lower percentage builds. And especially around the water there, lots of really in-depth foliage. They're so happy about this one. They have a baby. This one here pops herself down, and as if by magic, we get a little puppy dog appear. How cute is that? Yeah, I enjoyed this one. If you would like your habitat pimped, all you have to do is throw it onto the Steam Workshop with the hashtag Pimp My Habitat in the title or the description. I will find it. I'll pick one that I think I can do some fun with and bring it to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Be good.